Anyways, I put together 2 years. I went back out, got drunk. Within 48 hours, I almost killed a man in a bar. I swore I killed him. I tried to kill him. The alcohol tried to have me kill him. There was nothing nice about me. By the time I was 17 years of age, I'd walk in a bar, and my friend's father, and anybody that was in the bar would say, "Man, don't give that guy no alcohol. There's going to be a fight. Don't give him alcohol." It just didn't agree to me. I turned into the instant biggest a-hole you'd ever want to know. And I'd step on everybody's toes. And they would say, "Don't give it to him." So anyways, it's put together 2 years. Within 2 days, back out there, I almost killed a man. And I really thought I killed a man, and that the instant terror returned from the insanity of being drunk. And it scared me bad enough that I figured I'd better get back over there to that AA group that I was going to at the time. Luckily, they just loved me back in. I told an old man what happened. He said, "All right." He said, "If you think you got any more good ideas, you come run it by me, and I'll let you know whether it's a good idea or not." And that's the way it was. And somehow the fear enough of the detectives coming looking for me was so prevalent that it literally scared me back in here. This was a place I come to hide out at that point. And somewhere about a month and a half down the road, I walked into a Circle K store, and there the guy was that I thought I killed. He was with the same two girls and looked like they were still drunk from the same party, and they didn't even recognize me. And I said, "Man, he didn't die. Thank you, God." I thought for sure they were going to be coming to see me sooner or later, and just a total gift of grace, I guess, because I really did think that, that I had done something god awful. And what happened? I became a little bit more willing. I realized that obviously something was wrong with my program in the first 2 years, or else I wouldn't have had to pick up again. And I became a little more willing to try something different, and I did. And at that time, I think I actually got a sponsor. I was able to put 3 years together on this run of sobriety, and before I went out and got drunk again. And that time it lasted a couple months. Nothing too significant happened. I lasted about maybe, 3.5 months before my brothers and my fathers were putting these court-ordered acts on me to force me to get treatment or go to jail because I was messing up everything. I had a good county job I didn't want to lose. So I went to treatment, and somehow I got out of there, and I got back in these AA rooms, and I put together 6.5 years of sobriety. And I got drunk again. So that's basically how it's been. 2 years went out, got drunk. 3 years went out, got drunk. 6 years went out, got drunk. That was the first 11 years of my road to recovery. And I needed every one of them drinks to get to where I am today. Because if I hadn't have done it, I wouldn't be where I'm at. At going out and getting drunk after being here for 6.5 years was a real hard thing, because the program had given me everything. It gave me the homes, it gave me the vehicles, it gave me the wife, it gave me the child, and the swimming pools, and the vacations, and the this, and the that, and the other, and the next, and everything in life a young man could want. I had it, and I had it at a young age, and everything was going fine. But somewhere about 5 years, I got depressed. I got tired of coming to these meetings, listening to the same old stories over and over again. If y'all was just doing what I was doing, your life would be getting better too. You'd be getting new cars and new trucks and new houses and new motorcycles and new boats, and something happened where I just shut it off. I quit listening. And then for me, and this is part of my story, somebody suggested a genius that I was married to at the time was also in recovery. She had all these degrees in addiction and counseling and psychobabble and all that good stuff. Not that I make any bad judgments on it, but for me it don't work. I come to find out. And she suggested I go see somebody, and they gave me something. They gave me something to help me come out of the depression, and they gave me something to help me go to sleep. And I came right out of the depression. I rebuilt 3 different properties in a matter of a month, and I slept all weekend or something. And the next thing I knew, I was in the bar again. I put something in my system that I shouldn't have, and I had a bad reaction to it. And I broke out all over the place for the next year and a half. And it was nothing pretty and nothing nice about it. It was real hard, because the program had given me everything. I had a host of friends and people I sponsored, and although they didn't ever seem to do too good because we never worked no steps or anything like that, they just kind of liked me, I guess, because of who I was or whatever, or thought I was cool because I'd curse you out in a minute, or I'd sit on the back of the chair and tell you what I thought of you. Or I can be a real idiot from time to time, and I have been in these rooms throughout the years. I'm sad to say today, but it's been part of me. I'd take your inventory in a minute just so that you wouldn't get close enough to know me, to really know me, because if you really knew me, you weren't going to like me. What happened after all that, and I had to do all that, I was out there for a year and a half, and I almost lost everything that I had worked for. I finally, somehow, I got slung back through that revolving door over there, and I use a descriptive term of it as kind of like a piece of crap, just kind of stuck up against a wall up under this sign that says it's easier to stay sober than it is to get sober. And somehow I was lucky enough that I stuck, and it took a while to slide down before I got up on my feet and was able to walk out of there without having to pick up another drink. And how that happened was a short series of events. I think I was back 3 days, and a guy I had seen come in 10 years earlier, who was a friend of mine, he was a real tough cookie. He came in with purple spiked hair and pink spiked hair and chains and straps, big biker and burly, and like he could just crush you with his hand. And we had always been friends, but I always stayed away from him because I knew something just, he wasn't right. You know, I said, man, I'm going to do something, step on that guy's toes, and he's going to kill me. And I always avoided stuff like that. I'm not going to hang around with somebody who could whoop my butt. You kid? And he invited me out fishing. He was 10 years sober at the time. And I said, yeah, okay, I'll do that. I ain't got nothing to do on Saturday. And I went out fishing with him, and we were offshore, and he looked at me, and he asked me something in a general way that would usually get my attention. He said, hey, a-hole, tell me something. Have you ever worked at 12 steps, 1 through 12 with a sponsor? And I looked at him, and I looked at him dumbfounded, because this was like one of the last things I thought this guy was ever going to ask me about. For some reason, I still don't know why today, I answered him honestly, and I said, no, I hadn't. And he said, no wonder you can't stay sober. And I felt like although he didn't do it, I felt like he took his open hand and just like slapped me upside the head, and it was like, bam! I had been around for 11 years. I had been in thousands of meetings. And I never simply did what was suggested in every one of them meetings. Never even thought of it. Never even considered it. Because it was suggested. It's just suggested. That's for somebody else. It's not for me if it's just a suggestion. That's the way I took it. I mean, I wasn't real bright coming in here. I'm not the brightest guy in the world. I mean, I got in here, when I came here, I thought a principal was the head of an elementary school. That's how smart I was. And I'm dead serious when I said that. And I didn't believe anybody lived a life of principles or morals or values or anything of the sort. And if I watched anybody, any preacher, principal of a school, lawyer, doctor, anybody, I could see his flaws. I'd see him kick the dog or hit the kid or yell at the neighbor or stick the finger out the window down the street. I would find something wrong with that individual, and I would just know that they weren't who they said they were supposed to be. And therefore I trusted nobody. And I trusted nobody up until the age of 30. And that's all there was to it. So what happened? The next day after I got off that boat trip, I went back down to the River Club. I was sitting in a 1 o'clock meeting. I shared about the experience that happened to me. It was like, you know, one of these epiphanies, like, oh, I found the answer to life. Maybe this is what I ought to do. Maybe I ought to really try this thing. And I shared the story about the day before on the boat because I heard myself. I said no. I had never done it. And he said, no wonder you can't stay sober. And lucky for me, there was this old man in there who's still my sponsor today. His name's Jim. He normally does this meeting. He was sitting in the corner of the room. I had seen him for 3 or 4 days sitting over there in the corner of the room with a big book open, and people would like walk up every now and again, and he would show them something in the book, and They'd have out their pad and they'd be writing. I'd say, what the hell is that guy doing over there? I don't want nothing they got. I don't trust him right off the bat. Something ain't right over there. Anyways, it's after I shared that in this 1 o'clock meeting, Jim approached me and he said, my name's Jim and I'm an alcoholic. I heard what you shared. And he said, if you'd let me, I'd like to help you. He said, I heard that you said you had never worked the 12 steps and that you need to work the 12 steps. And he goes, I'd like to help you. He said, but unfortunately, I can only help you conditionally. And I said, conditionally? And I took a step back and looked up at him and I said, what's this old gray-haired geezer want from me? Coming over here looking to help me. And the truth of the matter, nobody else was there willing to help me. The guy at the spiked hair probably would have, but I didn't want anything that he had, you know what I mean? So I looked at him, and he talked to me for a few minutes, and he asked me just to simply if I would be willing to do whatever it was that he asked me to do and would show me out of this book. And he promised me he wouldn't show me or ask me to do anything that he couldn't show me in this book, that my problem would be solved. I said, solved? And I had been around for a while. I never heard that word solved. I never heard of the age-old riddle of alcoholism problem being solved. And now I really kind of just like stepped back and looked at him and I said, old man, in my mind I was saying, old man, I don't know what we're setting out to do or what's going to happen, but I know this much. I have no other option. I have no other alternative. I can't stay sober for longer than a week at a time because I was in one of them 3 to 5 day cycles where I just couldn't stop even as badly as I wanted to. I had to have it. And I was willing enough to make an agreement with him that I wouldn't pick up a drink or a drug until I got through the entire 12 steps, 1 through 12. He said, we can do it as fast as you want or you can do it as slow as you want. He goes, but I suggest that you get busy because you're in a foot race for your life, by the sounds of your story. And I looked at him, and I just thought to myself for a minute, and I said, you know what? I said, I'm gonna accept your help, and I'm gonna accept it conditionally in my mind. And if you do anything that's gonna hurt me, I'm gonna come back here. I'm gonna kill your old ass. And I'm gonna go right back out and get drunk. And that was the condition that I had in my own mind. You do anything that hurts me, I'm gonna come back here, I'm gonna kill you, and I'm gonna go out and get drunk. And that's where my head was. And he said, do this. He said, go home and read this. Go home and read this. I came back 2 days later and I said, it's read. What's next? He said, you read that whole thing? I said, yeah, I read the whole thing. I said, I didn't understand any of it, but I'm not real well read anyways. He said, but you read it? I said, yeah, I read it. And he said, all right. And he says, when it's time to get busy, let's get started on the steps. He says, I want you to open your book to page 45. Somebody suggested to me tonight, page 45, so it was right in line with the first page he ever told me to open to. And he told me to go to the first full paragraph on page 45. It says, lack of power. That was our dilemma. We had to find a power by which we could live, and it had to be a power greater than ourselves. Lack of power. That was our dilemma. We had to find a power by which we could live, and it had to be a power greater than ourselves, obviously. But where and how were we to find this power? The first thing he explained to me is that alcohol was only a symptom. It wasn't my real problem. He said, your real problem is, boy, that you lack power. A sufficient power that's going to keep you from picking up that alcohol and using it as a crutch in this great big world that you don't trust and that you don't like. He said, so this whole thing's going to be about you finding a power greater than yourself that, if we read on, it says, but where and how are we to find this power? Well, that's exactly what this book is about. Its main object is to enable you to find a power greater than yourself, which will solve. That's what I said, that word solve, which will solve your problem. And I said, wait a minute. I don't know if you can solve this problem, because what they tell me, it's going to be with me the rest of my life. And if it's going to be with me the rest of my life, how are you going to solve it? I'd go out and get drunk again. He said the book said solve. He said, you just do what I told you to do. He said, I'm going to tell you, this is how it's going to go from here. You're going to do what I tell you to do and what this book says to do, and God's going to do his part. You just do what I tell you to do, and God's going to do his part. And I listened to him, and I said, all right. And he goes, that's going to be your understanding with the first step, is that you lack power. Simply, you lack power. That's your understanding. My life wasn't unmanageable, too unmanageable at that point. I just couldn't stop. But I had 3 or 4 homes. I still had cars and trucks. I still had my daughter. I still had my wife. I still had the dog. I still had a boat. My life wasn't real unmanageable at this point. What my life was lacking was a lack of power. And it was a power that would help me to live in the world. AA had given me enough in just a year's sober prior that I couldn't even mess it up in a year and a half of drinking. And that's how it went. So he said, that's going to be your understanding with the first step. And he goes, I promise you, by the time you get to the 12th step, you will have had this spiritual awakening that the 12th step talks about. And I promise you that your problem will be solved. And it was about, I did the steps in a period of about 35 days with them. By the time I was 35 days sober, I was working 10, 11, and 12 on a regular basis. And I had made it quite a few 9-step amends, and I had a whole lot of them left to be made, but I've since made every one of them. What happened? The power ignited itself in me. Something happened. And I can't explain it because it's unexplainable. It was a miracle of sorts, because I didn't need to pick up alcohol anymore, and I didn't feel different than everybody else anymore in a room. I was able to feel everything that the promises say we're going to feel. I was able to be alone at perfect peace. I was able to be at peace even though quite a few things were in the midst of calamity. I was still peaceful. What was the calamity? Well, I was being sued for about $500,000 at the time that I got sober that I forgot to talk about. And I was going through a lawsuit concerning that. I had also filed a Chapter 13 bankruptcy. I was going through that. That's how I was able to straighten out a lot of my wreckage, was by simply filing a Chapter 13. And I was amazed at how well I was handling it. I was just simply and utterly amazed at how I was handling life on life's terms and life's problems, without having to go get drunk, or without having to cuss my wife out, or without having to kick the dog, or without having to take your inventory. By the time I got to the 12th step, he said, you got but one thing left to do, and that is to go and take it on to the next person that you can. This message. Not your mess, Danny. This message that I gave you. And that's what I did. All of a sudden, I found myself out on the back porch down at the river, where they got that back porch sobriety. And, during the whole meeting, they sit out there. And quite a few of them, and then they never stay sober. And, they put together 20 days and get drunk, or 90 days and get drunk, 90-day wonders. And I started trying to jam it down people's throats, because I knew that I had found the answer to life. I knew I found the answer to life. I had found what I was always looking for, and it was in the 12 steps. Now, life just kept on going. I mean, everything just didn't turn grand. I think I'd tried jamming it down about 5 guys' throats before I found one that was willing, truly wanting it. And he's still sober today. And since then, I've taken about, it's 7 years later for me, I've taken about 60 or 70 people through. And maybe a third of them all really bit the bullet, manned up, and had the same effects I did. A lot of them quit because they were unwilling to make 9-step amends. They were unwilling to do this, or they were unwilling to do that. But I've taken at least 60 to 70 people into the steps. Maybe not entirely through, but I got about a third of them that are still around. And today I get to enjoy all these things like great grand sponsor in meetings and have multiples of them in the room. I'm able to have a host of friends that all speak the same language that I speak. And we talk about spiritual things and spiritual answers for the problems in life rather than what we're used to. I got a sponsor, I got a slew of sponsees. A bunch of guys that I got all got slews of sponsees. And that's how we do this thing. We all do it together, one drunk helping another. Has the problem been solved? In me, the problem's been solved. You know how I found that out? Unfortunately, my wife had a relapse about 3 years ago, and she hasn't been able to make it back in. She's now ex-wife. I left her finally 5 months ago after 3 years of living with a retard that just ain't gonna ever get this thing again. I mean, she's just sick. How'd I know my problem was solved? I actually was able to have alcohol in my hands, trying to help her to detox off of other things she was using, such as cocaine, heroin, Oxycontins, and anything you could stick up your mouth or stick in your butt, she was doing, and repeatedly. And I think over at least the last year out of the 3-year bender that she went on, and I tried to hang in there through. Stupidly, I'd never suggest it to anybody to ever do it. Luckily, I had enough of a power in me and enough of a support group around me. I was able to get through it. She OD'd 12 times, and everything. I mean, everything that I used to couldn't control sticking in my mouth has been in my hands. Cocaine, heroin, pills, been in my hands. And what I did something that was completely sane and normal. I reacted to it like it was maybe rat poison. I'm not going to stick it in my mouth. You got to be out of your mind. And where them thoughts come from, I don't know, because 30 years prior, I couldn't have done that. I could not have done that. Would have never have happened. That's how I know my problem was solved. So I react sanely and normally. And it's something that happened automatically as a result of having done the work of the 12 steps. And it all started with this page right here, realizing that I lacked power and that I needed to get a power greater than myself between me and that next drink. And I got that power between me and it, and I haven't had to have a drink since. Thanks for letting me share. Yeah, I guess we're just going to open for discussion on lack of power on page 45. Thank you. Hi, Julie.
I think right now what I'm thinking about is a connection with a higher power and loss of control. I've been down here for almost 4 months and in and out of AA for 10 years. And
Thank you. Hey, Janina, you want to share with us?
Yeah, my name's Janine. I'm an alcoholic. And Danny and I go back about 10 years. His story is a lot like mine. I couldn't stay sober, floundering in and out of the program, in and out, in and out. I too found him. And I remember that corner that he used to sit up there in that little river. And I saw him around for a while, and I had just got out of jail. I was in jail for about 3 months, and I was facing 4 felonies and a DUI, and I was in jail for 3 months, and I got credit time served, withholding adjudication, and but they wanted to give me 2 to 3 years in prison and habitualize me. And that's where I was at, you know, and I knew that I couldn't go on, because I knew I was going to end up in prison, but I didn't know how to stop either, you know, and when I started listening to Jim speak, I too knew that he had the answer. And I went up to him, and I asked him, I said, will you help me? And he said, yeah, I will. And well, it didn't take me but probably a month either, going through the steps. And I'm like, well, what do I do now? And he says, well, dummy, you know, he talks. Well, dummy, you go out and you start sponsoring. I'm like, what do you mean I go out and start sponsoring? I don't have enough time yet. And he says, well, you've been through the 12 steps. You've got the answer. You know, and this is what you need to do in order to stay sober. And so I did. Danny had some 3-quarter-way houses, and so I had lots of victims. And I started practicing on them, and lo and behold, you know, a few of them got it, you know, and they went through the steps, and they started sponsoring, and there'd be a time, Little River, I'd be sitting out back, and there was a picnic table back there, and all of us girls would be sitting out there with our big books open, and we'd all be reading, and they would want to talk to us, and they wouldn't do it. They just keep walking outside, you know. And it's really been a wonderful journey, you know. The steps will save your life, you know. That's all I gotta say. Thanks for letting me share.
Thanks for sharing.
And I'm gonna pick you.
I'm Mary Beth. I'm an alcoholic.
Hi, Mary Beth.
Thank you so much for sharing. It's really inspiring your story. I don't know. I had time before in the program. I had 8 years, and then I had 6 years. And